I want the most vile, dark, evil people in this world that everyone judges, they can change. And I want them to be the highest version of themselves. And I welcome that change. People want to be distracted because we live in a heavy energetic density. Things are really chaotic in the world right now. And so sometimes it's nice to be distracted with something so that we can focus on that instead of focusing on everything else. But the key is, if we want to change the chaos
Yeah.
that we live in, we need to focus on it. As above, so below, as within, so without. And there's a reason why the antidote for venom is found in the venomum, right? It's like the problem has the cure. The same thing goes with people that you hate or the things that you hate. It's actually the cure if you can learn to love it. And love doesn't mean you like justify the actions. Love doesn't mean that you accept or whatever. Love just means that you hold space and allow its perspective to exist.
Could you give me the most crisp definition for forgiveness that you have? Hi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you for being my guest.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad we can make it work. Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah,
Where are
sure.
you from?
Originally, from Ukraine, so I was born in Kiev, but I was raised in Germany, so I'm basically German, and now
Yeah.
I moved to the US.
Классно. Я давно жил в Украине, и когда-то очень хорошо говорил по-русски, теперь я не могу говорить.
Ой, ничего
Я
себе!
говорю я говорю с большим акцентом. Yeah.
Ну, все понятно, хорошо.
Да, спасибо. Я жил в Киеве, в Одессе, Ровно
Мгм.
и Виннице.
Ой, класс. Я из Киева,
Классно.
родилась в Киеве.
Классно,
О-
да, да.
Ой, как классно. Да, я не говорю по-украински, только по-русски.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I could only speak Russian. I was there for 2 years.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, Russian or Surgic is what I could do. I
Oh,
couldn't speak Ukrainian though.
that's so cool. That's awesome. Were you there for work or was it just a
No, it was actually we can dive into a little bit on the podcast because it's part
yeah.
of my story. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. This is Insanity, the podcast with the double meaning. I did that on purpose because I figured that people think that sanity is to do what everyone else is doing, and there's a plan for everybody. And yet people are miserable and unhappy because they do all the things that are supposed to make them happy and supposed to lead them to success. And somehow they have the job, they have the money, they have the relationship, but they are unhappy. So why is it? And I thought maybe you are not insane enough, guys, like you have to do you. When I found your content, I was so inspired and I loved how you talked about hot topics, topics that are relevant right now, but you don't just discuss them from a political perspective or from a philosophical perspective. But what you do is you look at the things as a reflection from who we are on the inside, like each and every one of us. And I think that's a bitter pill to swallow for many people because whenever something happens that they don't like on the outside, it forces them to look within, and that's uncomfortable. And this is something that I value a lot. And I wanted to ask you what your journey is and what led you to this understanding.
Well, it was quite the journey, that is for sure. So I was born and raised in a Mormon family, like the Mormon church, and it's a very Christian, community-focused church. There's a lot of amazing things, but there is a heavy, heavy focus, kind of like service, devotion to God, devotion to Jesus. And it was a big part of my life. And a big thing that happens when you're in the Mormon church is a lot of people have seen that, like the musical, The Book of Mormon, about like the missionaries. So I was a missionary for 2 years when boys turned 19 and girls as well. They get sent to a random place in the world to learn a language and essentially teach people about the church to bring in conversions. And so I served my mission in Ukraine. We were talking about it. Like
Okay.
so that's where I was sent to Ukraine. That's why I learned Russian. And it was a beautiful experience. Like it was really cool. But like within the Mormon church, there's a very specific focus and lens through which you view the world.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is kind of like we have the truth, we have the whole truth, we have the correct perspective, and everyone is wrong, and we need to teach them our perspective. Um, and so it was an interesting experience for me being a 19-year-old boy going to Ukraine and teaching these people essentially, hey, here's why my perspective is correct, and here's why you should listen to me, right? And what I noticed while I was out there is that there are so many different perspectives and just amazing people and like things that I can learn. And so eventually I came home from my mission. I started kind of like distancing myself after a few years from like the church, and started having, my own experiences with, okay, maybe I don't know everything, right? Because I was born into a belief system that from day one I have been told, like, we know everything. This is what it is. We know it. We know it. And so it was very uncomfortable for me to kind of like switch my energy from I know everything to I don't know anything and I'm willing to learn. And what I've noticed is as I've adopted that new energy of being willing to learn, willing to take on new perspectives, willing, the word I always use in kind of like my coaching sessions with people is you have to have the courage to see things as they are, not as you want them to be or not as you would like them to be, but see them as they are. And the only way you can do that is in non-judgment, right? Because the reason why people kind of project onto reality or create stories in their head of why things are happening is because they want to feel either good about themselves or they want to create a story for why all of the problems are outside of us. But within me, I'm good. And it's true. You are good. You're amazing. No one is taking that away from you. But what I realized is, as I started having the courage to see things as they were, I could start looking at my behaviors. I could start seeing where, in conversations, where would I bulldoze people? Where do I think my opinion is the only one that matters? In relationships, what are the psychological games that I play to maintain control, and I'm not saying like they were like these crazy psychological games, but like with me and my ex-wife, we would have this like push and pull where when we would get into an argument, what she would want was to feel close with me, right? Like when we would fight, she would want to feel close. But what I would want is distance. Like I would want space. But what I would do is I wouldn't focus on what she needed. I would focus on what I needed because I knew if I pulled away from her, then she would come and apologize to me or come to my way of thinking, right? And so as I held myself in non-judgment, I started to begin to like look at myself and look at the things that I was doing and the energy that I embody, where if I can see how a billionaire is greedy and I notice that in them, well, do I have the courage to notice where I'm greedy, where I take more than I need, right? And so that awareness just kind of took me down this path where life just became the greatest teacher where every single day there's just lessons that are going on. And so what I try to share in my social media is, these experiences that I've had through this awareness, and then trying to teach people the same thing, like you were saying, talk about, what's going on in politics or what's going on in the world, but then try to do it through a lens of like, hey, what is this teaching us about ourselves, right? Because these aren't random events. They're not just happening for no reason. We are creating them. And so if we can identify why we create them, we can also begin to alchemize that energy from something negative to something more positive, more expansive. And that's ultimately what my goal is. But you can only do it for yourself, right? And then you can share what you know with others, but it's up to them to kind of take that path themselves.
That's super, super powerful. And what I love about it, and I think what everyone can do, is paying attention to the triggers, to what triggers us about outside events, even people, when someone says something, and when we accuse each other of certain things. Because what I've noticed is I would not be able to see the negative, what I think is negative, in somebody else if I did not have that within myself. Because sometimes there are situations like someone will say something out of some negativity, personal negativity, and I don't understand why. Like I'm just confused. I'm sitting there and I'm like, what's going on? Like, what's this person going through? Like, I'm literally dumb in this moment. I don't know
Yeah.
what's going on. And then I'm realizing, oh, that's because I don't have this trigger. I don't have this motivation.
Mhm.
But whenever I do realize immediately, oh, this person is jealous, or oh, this person is this and that, that's because I know it. And I think that's
Yeah.
like this powerful insight that we have the ability to search within ourselves. Like when we recognize the emotion, it's because we have the emotion.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the triggers are like the greatest teachers. The same thing with like our emotions. Um, it's yeah, it's really, really interesting uh, because anything that you identify outside of yourself is something that you have within yourself that maybe you're just not ready to look at yet. And so you suppress it and it manifests outside of you. And that's why you see it, right? So, for example, you have all of these different groups who preach love and acceptance. Right, where it's like love everyone, accept everyone, and then you have like so. For example, you could take like some Christian communities, right, where it's Jesus's whole message is about love and acceptance. But in the same vein, right, they will say very judgmental things against people who don't align with their way of thinking, right? They'll call it satanic. They'll judge like the LGBTQ community, saying this is against God, you're sinners, right? And there's a lot of judgment outside. The interesting thing is the LGBTQ community as well is all about love and acceptance, but they get triggered by the Christian community and they get really annoyed with them, right? Because they're like, you're so judgmental, like you can't
True.
accept. And the funny thing is, it's like they both have the same energy, they both have their own reasons for judgment, right? And all of those reasons are valid. Like these groups have been persecuted, like there has been harm, there has been traumas. Like I'm not saying that these things aren't valid, but what I'm saying is what it highlights to you is the same judgment that you notice in someone is like the judgment that you're actually passing in that moment as well, right? And so it's just with that awareness we can recognize because ultimately you have your energy and your energy is like your creative power and your energy dictates the existence that you have and the opportunities that you bring to yourself, the abundance that you live within. And what reality is going to challenge you to do is it's going to challenge you by kind of like distorting your energy, by bogging you down with these complex emotions, these heavy emotions, right? Where you get so consumed with something that triggers you or someone that makes you mad or someone that does something and you just can't stop thinking about it.
Mhm.
But the thing is, you are the one that's giving it power to control you. And ultimately, even if you disagree with someone, even if they do something that triggers you, why would you give them the power to like consume your thoughts or have an impact on your day or contract your vibration and pull you into a lower state, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so it's one of those things. And I think the biggest thing though is anything that triggers you, anything that you judge, anything that you hate, like the things that you hate the most, it is actually the path and the gateway to your highest most expansive state. Because if you can love the things that you've been so conditioned to hate, you can love everything else. If you can learn to detach from those things that you hate, you can detach from everything else. And so the ironic thing is it's kind of that saying where it's like as above so below, as within so without. And it's there's a reason why the antidote for venom is found in the venom, right? It's like the problem has the cure. The same thing goes with the people that you hate or the things that you hate. it's actually the cure if you can learn to love it. And love doesn't mean you like justify the actions. Love doesn't mean that you accept or whatever. Love just means that you hold space and allow its perspective to exist. It means that even though I disagree with you, I recognize that you are a divine aspect of divinity that is incarnate on this creation. And so you are entitled to take up space just as I am. And so we don't have to agree. We don't have to see the same way or see the same perspective, but I can still love you and honor you and accept that you are you. And I do not want to change you. I want you to be you to the fullest degree. And I wish nothing but happiness for you. And the more you can cultivate that mindset for the things that you hate, everything else falls into line. And so it's the ironic thing is it's like the people we hate the most sometimes feel like a devil or a demon, but they're actually an angel because they're here to serve you, to show you where you can expand into a higher awareness of love.
That's awesome. So the really powerful practice would be to consciously identify all the things that you hate, qualities that you hate, people that you hate, like really acknowledge the hate, whatever makes you
Yeah.
hateful, and then allow it to exist in your environment. Just
Yeah.
make space for it. Like that would be the ultimate definition of love because it means you allow these things to exist unconditionally.
Yep. Exactly. It's the sun radiates on the earth irrespective of what is going on the earth. If there's good people, bad people, tall people, short people, fat people, it radiates in all directions, right? In the same way that a tree gives its shade to everyone and everything that walks by. It doesn't withhold shade from what it deems is bad. That's what love is. Love isn't saying like kumbaya, everything's okay, whatever happens, happens. Love is allowing space for everything. Love is recognizing that like all of the energies at play right now, especially in this world, sometimes we blame people for their actions.
Mhm.
But the interesting thing is your subconscious mind dictates like 98% of your actions. And most people, right, their subconscious is filled with programming, with trauma, with inherited energies. And so the realistic assumption is anybody on this planet, if you were born into their body with their perspective, had the same experiences, most likely you would handle things in the same way, right? Because the vast majority of people operate from that unconscious state of the subconscious dictating the actions. And so the other side of this is these people that we judge, these people that we hate, what you actually hate or what you actually don't like, it's simply the energy that they are born with. And can you judge someone for the energy that they're born with? You know, no, because they inherited it from ancestors. They had traumas that happened to them. And this is why it's so important. You know, like people talk about you need to love the sinner, but hate the sin, right? Uh, it's the idea that if someone does something bad, you can still love the person
Yeah.
while rejecting the thing that they did, right? And it's a tough paradox to hold. But truly, when you look at it, you know, you can look at these billionaires who are incredibly greedy, who only think about themselves, who are trying to pull in more money, more power, more control, whatever it may be. Ultimately, it always comes down to fear. They need more control because they feel like they don't have control and they have a fear of losing something or their ego is tied into play, right? There's so much fear involved with this, but they have this energy where they take. It's the same energy, though, for people who go into their office pizza party and they realize there's not enough pizza for everyone, but they take multiple slices because they want to make sure that they get enough to eat, right? But they think because it's just pizza, it's not that big of a deal. But then they look at these billionaires and they say, they're so greedy. How can they do that? And the thing is, it's like it's the same energy, even though it's at a different scale because of the opportunities at place, it's the same energy. And we all have those things that we can work on, right? It's very, very easy. The two biggest energetic parasites for people to overcome are the judge and the victim. It is you give your energy to judging things outside of you. You give your energy to this victim mindset that everything is happening to you, that all of the good is in me. Why do bad things happen to good people? Right. And it's what these parasites do is they siphon away your creative energy and it keeps you in this stagnated state where you just repeat patterns. When you recognize that you're not a victim, when you recognize that any judgment you make outside of you is simply a reflection of something that you judge within you, you can start to bring yourself into wholeness. And then you start using your creative abilities, that power that you have, your manifestation, to create something for you instead of creating the distortion that consumes most people right now.
Right, exactly. Like the manifestation that you are, like the thing that you are manifesting from that perspective is the same thing over and over again, like just this repetitive cycle. Whereas when you break out of it, like when you leave this position of the judge or the victim, then you have the ability to see beyond that and what you actually want, not based on what happened to you or what is like what was in the past, but based on what's possible now and in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it comes down to it's just signaling some inner healing that you need to do because the only reason why we judge things outside of us is because we judge that same energy or a parallel energy within us, right? We fragment ourselves. We say, here's the pieces I accept, here's the pieces I don't accept. And so that split in that fragmentation, it manifests outside of us so that we can identify things that we accept and things that we don't accept, right? It all plays out. It's just a reflection of us. And so anytime there's something outside of you that you don't accept, you can go inwards and you can say, what is this showing me about me? Where can I, pull myself back into wholeness? And the beautiful thing is once you've healed enough, then you get to the point where you no longer pass judgment. It doesn't mean that you don't like judge people. Like you can love someone and like see their actions or what they're doing and say like that's not a good idea,
Yeah.
or like that I disagree with that and I'm actually going to very like vocally disagree with it out of love. Um, but you're not holding that person solely accountable for everything that is wrong. And like, I recently had an experience like my mom called me and she had this beautiful experience where she had this insight and she told her sisters and her mom about it and they had this like 5 hour intervention with her, telling her why she was wrong, why that insight is incorrect, that it's not true, and here's why. And they would like pull out all the scripture and they would tell her. And it was interesting because, I was talking to my mom about it and I was telling her it's like the reason why they fought you so hard when you said this insight is not because they think you are wrong. It's because they don't believe it themselves. And so they have to tell you that you're wrong. So her insight, right, was that God loves her as she is, that she is acceptable as she is. She's a little bit
Wow.
loud and she's a little bit loud and a little bit crazy sometimes, and she truly felt where it's like that's okay, you don't need to be quieter, you don't need to be less crazy, I love you as you are, be you. And so her family was just like, no, that's not correct, you need to change, you need to do this, you need to do that. And so what I was telling her
Yeah.
is what they were reflecting is actually they feel like for themselves that they're not good enough, they feel like they need to change, they feel like they are not accepted, and so they project it onto her and they say you're not good enough, but really what they're saying is I'm not good enough, I don't feel good enough. And so when you have that awareness and that non-judgment, you don't get triggered as much because you don't feel the attack from someone when they project onto you, and you recognize what they're experiencing, what they're saying is simply them exposing how they feel about themselves on the inside. And like when you have that awareness, you can also meet it with like love and compassion. And you don't have to fight back with them because they're not going to see things. It doesn't matter how well you present it. Like there's no convincing people, but what you can do is you can share love with them. So for in that example, if someone's coming to you and they're saying like, no, that's not true. You're not good enough, whatever. You can say, I know it's true. And I know it's true for you. And I know that you're good enough as you are right now. Right. And it's like, that's how you plant these seeds. But also you don't get triggered. You can have that compassion and love and just recognize where it's like, oh, they don't feel good enough about themselves. How can I be an extension of the divine and make them feel that love and acceptance, right? And so it's a very like expansive state to be in. And yeah, it's very different.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult, powerful, and beautiful if you're able to say that. If someone criticizes you for who you authentically are because they don't know better, and your response can be, if you're able to say that back to them, like, no, I know that I'm good the way I am, and you are good the way you are
Yeah.
too. That's so powerful to do that.
Using love because
Mhm.
people won't change, especially if you fight with them or if you scream at them. It doesn't matter how loud you scream, they're never going to change their opinions because they're afraid. They're pushed into fight or flight or fawn. But when you meet people in love, you can plant seeds, right? There's a frequency, there's a resonance that these words and these expressions carry. And that frequency and that resonance, that energy, that is what is going to soften people's hearts and change things versus like screaming at them. Um, but yeah, ultimately, it just comes down to the only people that are triggered by others who would live authentically are those who are not living authentically. And
Yeah.
so it triggers them because they see the freedom that some people live with. And they think that can't be true because I don't experience it, right? They hold themselves as a prisoner. And so they fight it because instead of liberating themselves, they would rather see others constrict themselves in the same way that they do. And so the goal is to help them to recognize that they are safe enough to express more authentically. They are safe enough to just be themselves. And there's nothing to prove. They just need to be. And in
Yeah.
that being, there's peace.
And if you're watching this right now, and you feel triggered by some freedom that other people are experiencing, then I think like a really beautiful question to ask yourself would be, how can I gain this freedom for myself? Not like an immediate response like that can't be true. What he says, he cannot experience that, or there are disadvantages that are attached to that. Like love can't be unconditional, like whatever it is that triggers them. Like I'd just ask myself, is it possible for me to experience that? And am I ready to receive some sort of truth? How I'm gonna get there, like the information, the actual information.
It's so interesting because there's so many different ways, if you really look with awareness of where we collapse ourselves or where we hold ourselves back in our expression. So, for example, like I was with my girlfriend, and we were in Bali, and she wanted to take me to kind of like some somatic dance thing or something like that. I don't dance. I've never danced. Like I went to, school dances in high school and I didn't dance. And I was always just very insecure. And so the older I got with it, the more I was like, I'm not going to dance. Like, I'm not going to expose myself. And it's like a lot of people thought it was really funny because in a lot of ways, I'm very like extroverted, and very expressive and totally cool with being myself. But when it came to dancing or doing something like karaoke, I'll shut down and I won't do it because it was so embarrassing for me. And it was really cool because with her, she took me to this dance and she was just like, why? She's like, why do you have a hard time dancing? And, I sat with that and I was just like, well, I'm afraid I'm going to look goofy. And she was just like, well, why do you care what anyone thinks? Like, why, she's like, why would you still care what people think? And she was like, you need to dance so that you can like break out of this contraction that you're in and like show yourself where it's like, I don't care what people think. I don't care what I look like. I'm just going to go dance and have fun because this is what I want to do, And so that was like a very expansive moment for me where it was this massive fear, And it's the same thing where people are like, oh, I want to post on social media or I want to do some things. And it's like, but what are people going to think? Or what if the video's not good? What if it doesn't get engagement, right? There's so many things that hold you in this contractive space because you're worried about what someone thinks, right? Or what others' opinions are. But that is no way to live because you are your expression and you do not express for others' opinions. You do not express for others' approvals. You simply express because you are living your life. You are here to be who you're supposed to be, and you do that fearlessly. And so, for a lot of people, I tell them it's just like, even if you don't want to post on social media, you should, just to get out of your own head of caring about the image that you have and how you talk about things. And it's like to teach yourself that you can, post and just not care. And so there's a lot of like, some of these things are like very, very deep where you can be like, okay, what are the groups that I hate? Where do I judge? And then other things are like very little where it's like, oh, in a business meeting, why do I want to say things, but I hold my voice, or I don't speak up? Why would I do that? Right. And it's like, I need to learn to honor my voice and speak up and not care.
That's super true. And I learned so much from posting. Like I post a lot for myself, I would say basically, because I feel that it teaches me a lot. Like it teaches me to be fearless and to do something I believe in anyway. And once I gave this advice, I even posted about it and I said that. And some people were very critical of it because they were like, yeah, but this is how you get like addicted to validation and stuff. I didn't even think about it. I was so confused. So I was like, yeah, if you are
Yeah.
already addicted to it, maybe, but I think it's you are addicted to validation and that's why you don't post.
Yeah. Well, and ironically, I think yeah, it's the not posting, like you were saying, is also a sign of an addiction to validation. And the reason why you're not posting is because you're not going to get the validation that you want. And so you're like, well, it's not worth doing because it's not going to give me what I want, right? And so every action has its like positive and negative. Every action has its equal and opposite. And so posting on social media can be something that gets you addicted to validation if you get consumed by it. There's a lot of influencers, right, where it takes over their entire life and everything is about how many views am I getting? Who saw this, right? Like, what's the next post that I do? What are the comments? Um, but it also can be an incredible training ground where you can learn to post and not care about the validation, not care about the views, not care about any of the comments, right? You're putting yourself into the energy, but you're not being consumed by it. And it doesn't matter what the action is. Every action is neutral. It just comes down to your consciousness and your awareness behind it, whether it's going to be something that expands you or contracts you. It's the same thing with like Netflix and watching, TVs. There's ways to like do it in moderation. There's ways to consume media that can be incredibly expansive. There's ways to watch it where it can give you a little break from reality, a little recharge. But then there's also ways where it can be incredibly addicting. It can be consuming. It can be a form of escapism, like any other drug, right? And it's not that Netflix or these shows are good or bad. It just comes down to every user and what's the consciousness and the awareness behind it. What is the intention? And that's like the toughest pill to swallow because again, most people look at themselves as a victim. And so when you talk about posting on social media, they're going to come to you, well, no, here's how you're going to get addicted to validation. They're just speaking to their own energy. They're speaking to their own the energy that they embody. And so while you can recognize that and say, okay, I can see how that's true for you, it doesn't make it true for me. And so
Yeah, people are also super afraid of judgment. And you said something super cool about judgment, and this is that you basically can love someone and judge them at the same time. And I think that's a very, or if I understood it correctly, because
Yeah.
that's an insight that also hit me just a few days ago. I was like, well, yeah, I'm judging people all the time. And I don't want to stop judging anyone because I think that's just what we naturally do. And it doesn't necessarily need to be negative judgment. Like I can also judge something
Yeah.
positively. And I think that's just how we go through life. And sometimes, and I personally find it entertaining. Like I think it's entertaining when I think, what a stupid decision or what a stupid outfit or whatever, even if it's that basic. But I think that's funny, but I allow them to be, and I can still allow this person to make this decision without,
Yeah.
hating on them and losing myself in this emotion. I can just judge it superficially. And I think if someone would try not to be judged by me, that would be the ridiculous thing. Or if I would try
Yeah.
not to be judged by others because I don't want to control how they feel about me. And who says that they judge me, but they don't like me at the same time, for example?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I think ultimately it comes down to like, I think like the judgment that we're speaking to is like, there's like a certain level of like discernment, right? Where it's like you can see people and you can love them and you can recognize that they are an expression of divinity
Yeah.
and that they have their highest potential just as everybody else does. But then you can also discern that that person might be dangerous or that person might be, like someone that you don't want to hang around. Or you can discern and say, like, this is a person that I don't want in my life because it's not benefiting me. Okay. And it's like, you're not hating on them. You're not saying you don't have a right to exist, but you use that discernment. It's the same way where I can look at some of these like elected officials in the world that I very much so disagree with.
Yeah.
And I do not think they are good leaders. I do not think that they embody um, practical like leadership and higher
Yeah.
forms of sovereignty that are needed at this time. And so, wow, I think there's a lot of these elected officials that are not in positions that they should be in. I think they should be living very different lives. I also do not think that they are inherently evil or they are the worst people on the planet and they're the ones that are causing all of the issues. Ironically, a lot of the bad actors on the global stage right now are still serving humanity because it's their actions that are collectively forcing people to wake up. And so, even though we wouldn't deem their service as something that is inherently good, they are still providing a service to the overall collective. And people just need to wake up and shuffle these people out of these systems that are incredibly corrupt. But it's everybody has a role to play. Everybody is serving humanity in one way or another. And ultimately, it comes down to we cannot fix the world. We cannot change the world by forcing others to become like us. What we need to do is we need to just have the confidence to be ourselves, to live the highest expression, the most full expression that you can be, and to trust that you are who you are. You are who you're meant to be. You are right where you're supposed to be. Every lesson that is happening, the ups and downs, they are all perfectly timed. Nothing is out of place. And the more that you just pay attention to your journey, go inwards, bring yourself into fullness, you'll notice that problems will begin to fix themselves outside of you. But if we only focus on fixing things outside of us, nothing changes because we will repeat the same loops because the energy hasn't changed. And so the reflection is still going to be the same. If I'm standing in
Yeah.
front of a mirror and I'm looking at the mirror and I'm refusing to smile, the mirror's reflection is always going to show me that I'm not smiling. And it doesn't matter if I scream at the mirror and say, like, smile,
Smile.
you need to smile, right? It's like when I start smiling, the reflection will smile back at me. And so, that's why all of these great mystics, it sounds so cheesy where they say, you want to change the world, change yourself. And it like ultimately it comes down to the only change that you have power over is yourself. And so everything you should focus on is, how do I become the most loving version of myself? How do I become the highest expression of myself? How do I pull in abundance and recognize that everything is working out for me? How can I use that abundance to serve others, right? And lift them up with where I'm at? Because when you lift others up, you're only lifting up yourself, right? It's always a symbiotic energy. Um, that's the only way. You can't change it outside of you. We can only change ourselves.
It only sounds cheesy because it's true on the literal level. Because you cannot give anything to others that you don't have. If you're not good to you, you can't be good to anyone else. Like it's true on the literal level. And I absolutely love what you said about these figures, like public figures who we condemn, who we judge all the time for being like the reincarnation of evil
Mhm.
or whatever. And I agree. I think they serve a purpose in our society right now. Because in the past, when I look at history, then it was very difficult sometimes to distinguish between bullshit and truth. People didn't have the degree of education we have right now. We were not all that connected. Humanity is getting more and more self-aware the entire time. We are more knowledgeable. We learn more. So it all goes kind of hand in hand. And right now, these people are just, what they are doing is so absurd on such a high level that it's almost impossible not to see that anymore for the majority of people. Like if 50 years ago you would still doubt it and say, oh, but they must know better because they are in this position and so on. Like then now you already know that's not the case. So the evil or the, let's say, the unsustainability of the actions gets more and more clear. So I do think it serves such a high purpose because we can finally see it clearly and say we don't want it anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can look at like the animal kingdom. I think you can look at all of creation, and it's all such amazing reflections of how things work together. You look at like the indigenous knowledge, the knowledge of natives around the world who live with the earth, who talk about the changing of the seasons and what it teaches you, what you can learn from these animals and the different energies. There's so much there. And I think, a lot of times we like to call things like good and evil. But what I think it's more of is, I think there is light, and light, I would say, is like awareness. Light is understanding. Light is connection. And the opposite, what shadow would be like disconnection. It would be ignorance. It would be the absence of light, right? And so I don't believe that many people are truly like inherently evil and that's why they do things, but they are incredibly unconscious and acting out of ignorance, acting out of alignment with who they are actually at their core, right? And that's the key, is recognizing that these people that we judge as evil are actually incredibly out of alignment with who they actually are. And there's a really, really interesting kind of like principle with this that I hope some of your listeners like will understand. But there's incredibly complex energies at play everywhere. And what karma is if I do something with you, and let's say there's like an imbalance and something needs to be repaid, if you will. There's now this energetic attachment between you and I, where something needs to come back into balance. And it creates this wheel because it's kind of like this teeter totter, right? And there's this complex web throughout all of creation of all of our karmic ties, good things that are deserved for people, other things, corrective measures that are deserved. And it just creates this like teeter totter that keeps going back and forth. The best way to get off of that teeter totter is just forgive and detach, just to say, like, I'm detaching from this energy. Someone did something to me, and it's like, I recognize that that was wrong. I recognize that I deserved better. I recognize that this shouldn't have happened. And it's like, but also, respectfully, I unsubscribe. Like, it's totally cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep my energy. Like, I do not need to give this energy. I do not need to think about it. I don't need to resume. Like, I am whole. I've always been whole. Nothing has been taken from me. Um, that is called energetic sovereignty. You can essentially free yourselves from these chains by just forgiving everyone and everything, and just accepting it as it is, recognizing that it happened. It is serving your expansion. It doesn't mean it was okay. It doesn't mean it was justified, but just because it happened doesn't mean I need to keep giving it energy, right? I can move on. What's interesting about this is, let's say you have 20 people in a family, okay? And there's one member of the family that is an alcoholic, right? And if all of the 19 other people in that family, if all they think about this person is they're an alcoholic, they're never going to change. They always do this. What they are putting their conscious energy to is the fact that this person is never going to change. Now, he has or she has the ability to change, but they're also working against very strong energies because everyone is projecting onto them their inability to change. And this is why they feel that energy where it's like, oh, I want to go drink alcohol, or this is happening, right? Now, if those other 19 members could change their mindset and recognize that while this person is an alcoholic, right, and they drank alcohol yesterday and the day before, the past doesn't dictate the present. It never has. Everybody has the ability to change. And if those 19 people would put their conscious energy to thinking about that person, where it's like he or she can get into alignment, this is not who they are. That's never been them. That is a story. Like, they will overcome or expand past this in that divine time. What they actually do is they start manifesting and creating an energetic kind of like opportunity for that person where this control or this like contraction becomes less and less oppressive. And now they feel more energetically aligned to expand past what they were previously doing. And that's why I think it's incredibly important to keep the mindset. Again, we can discern, we can look at people's actions and say, that is not okay. What they're doing is not okay. But we can also recognize that everybody has the ability to change, because when we recognize that, we're putting our conscious energy to that future, giving people the power to change. And that's what's the most important thing is it's like we are all holding each other prisoner for no reason. And when you recognize that you can change, you recognize everyone else can, and you want everyone to change. I want the most vile, dark, evil people in this world that everyone judges, they can change. And I want them to be the highest version of themselves. And I welcome that change, right? And like that's the energy we need to embody.
Yeah, I welcome the change. And what I also loved was what you said about forgiveness. Could you give me the most crisp definition for forgiveness that you have?
Let me give you an analogy. Sometimes, right, you like sign up for something with your phone and then they'll like send you marketing text messages or something like that, right? And then you can like text back stop or unsubscribe and they cannot contact you anymore. Actions that happen to you, they live in your energy field. And your mind will constantly go back to them. It'll pull you out of the present. So, like, if abuse has happened, or if a traumatic event has happened, or if your partner said something mean to you, it'll consume you, right? And you'll just be like, that was so mean. Here's why they're wrong, right? I need to fight, whatever. All that is doing is pulling your creative energy, your conscious energy, and creating this storm inside of yourself. And so what forgiveness is learning to energetically text back and say stop or unsubscribe, where it's just like, it's like, you know what? It's annoying that my partner said that. I need to, like, I do realize that I need to go talk to them and I need to hold an energetic boundary. I need to express my truth, but also I'm not being consumed by this. Like, it is not worth my time. There are other things I'm doing, there's other things I'm creating, and I'm very focused on those things instead of being bogged down by these distractions. And so, forgiveness to another person is simply forgiveness to yourself. And I just think, you know, everybody has a certain amount of energy, everybody has a certain amount of creative output. And a lot of that gets wasted on things that you just keep getting texts on your phone where it's like, buy this, do this, whatever. And it's like, you just need to unsubscribe from those things and completely get rid of the distractions and focus on what you actually care about. Because for the vast majority of people, there's probably a big fight that you had with someone 2 years ago that like consumed you and like all of this. But now that you're 2 years past, it's just kind of like, what was I so mad about? Or like, why was that such a big deal? Or like, was it even worth my time? And so I think when you have that perspective, most of these big things that we give into, it's more of just a distraction because we want a distraction. People want to be distracted because we live in a heavy energetic density. Things are really chaotic in the world right now. And so sometimes it's nice to be distracted with something so that we can focus on that instead of focusing on everything else. But the key is if we want to change the chaos that we live in, we need to focus on it.
Yeah, I love this. So everyone who wants to forgive somebody for anything just repeats after us, I unsubscribe. And you heal yourself.
Right from the bullshit. Unsubscribe from the bullshit. Respectfully, no thank you. Yeah.
And you heal yourself and you heal the world.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. Yeah, what's funny to me is that I never hear any religious person talk about it in a way that's understandable or that I can relate to. Because we started the conversation with religion and your history in religion or in a religious group. And I have never been religious. I've never been part of anything, and I like it. But I was always very open to listening in general. And what happened to me when I came to the States was that I unsubscribed from this opinion quite quickly because I was like, oh gosh, like leave me alone with all that. I've never heard an actual definition for love or forgiveness from anyone who's religious that would practically help me or anyone else in their life. Why is that?
Yeah, I think it's because what religion does, I think what many religions do is they give you the illusion of giving you answers, right? And so you assume that you have the answer. You read something and you say, this is the way that it is because my scripture is written by God and this is what it means. But the thing is, they don't actually have like the experience, or like that's what gnosis is, right? Gnosis, gnosis, that knowledge. It's when you pair the wisdom in the head with like embodied action, and you can actually see this is how it is, And so, for example, the things that I talk about and teach about, the forgiveness and like unsubscribing, that's not because I read it in a book. It's not because I read it in the Bible and here's the verse that I can teach you or whatever. It's because as I've gained awareness of my own energy and as I've called energy back into me, as I've unsubscribed, I've noticed the changes that it's brought about in my life. I've noticed how expansive it feels, how much more control I have, right? And so most teachers that can like break these things down so that people can understand are people that have walked with that knowledge and they have the gnosis. They teach from experience. The issue is most people perform being a teacher and they speak about things they don't understand. And so they can't explain it in ways that people can understand. And then when people don't get it, they're just like, well, you're just not smart enough. That's why you don't get it. And it's like, no, actually, you don't know what you're talking about. And you need to, experience it a little bit more. People need to stop preaching about love and they need to start seeking, how can I actually love more, right? Like the amount of religious people who talk about love on a daily basis, but their actions don't embody love. Like it is one of the craziest hypocrisies in the world. But it doesn't matter how much you talk about things, your actions, your actions show you if you actually embody what you're saying.
Yeah, because religious people, for example, like Christian people, say things like love another as yourself. And I just think, no thanks, because the way you guys love yourself, please leave me alone.
Yeah.
When I have my truth already, so I understand what love feels like for me, when I am able to hold space for other people, I see their divinity, like I know how valuable they are, even though they are annoying. So if I'm able to walk with this state of mind or state of being, if I feel like that, and then I read something like that, like love another as yourself, then I hear it, then I actually understand it because I already come from a place where I experience it. But if I have never experienced this connectivity, it just doesn't feel like it's true, especially not when the same people are fighting others the entire time. Like, who are they loving and for what?
I think ultimately there's so many people who are religious that are really good people who are tapped in, and because religion, just as spirituality, just as going out in nature, just as any creative pursuit, like there's so many different things. All of them are tools that can either serve connection or disconnection. You can go to church and it can connect you with the divine, or you can go to church and it can disconnect you and send you into illusion. And both of those exist, right? Like you can see them everywhere. And ultimately, there's always like two forces at play, or two energies. And it's the energy that can like expand you into more, understanding more, loving more, experiencing more, holding space for more. Or there's the energy that contracts, that says, I know everything. Everything that's outside of what I know is wrong. I'm right. And what that does is it creates this energy where you're never going to change because you're not open to changing, right? And so it just ultimately comes down to, what we were saying at the beginning of the podcast. You just have to look at yourself, and look at yourself with awareness, and have the courage to see as you are, and start feeling things in your body and feeling your energy and saying, okay, does this action expand me or does it contract me? Does being around this person expand me or does it contract me? When I participate in these actions, are they expansive for me or do they contract, right? And the more you can feel into it, the more your intuition is going to guide you into what your fullest state is. Because sometimes to expand, for me, some of my biggest expansions came from disconnecting from people in my life that were constantly pulling me into a contractive state. That doesn't mean I don't love them. It doesn't mean I judge them, but it means that I'm going to honor myself above all else and unsubscribe, right? And so like I expanded once I got rid of some of the things that were causing me to like collapse. And so yeah, I just think it comes down to, if you're talking to someone and they could be religious, right? And it's like their perspective can be expansive for you, or their perspective can be contractive. And ultimately, your intuition always knows. Your inner knowing and that discernment is always there. And so listen to it and honor it. And if you feel contraction, don't give your energy to it. But if you feel expansion, continue to listen to the perspective. Allow yourself to see things through someone else's eyes, right? And it's like you don't have to take it on, but you can grow and then add it to what you know.
Mm-hmm. Is it something like this teaching and the coachings that you do? Is it something that you're doing full time now?
Yeah. So I have like a couple of things that I do. I don't market my readings and coachings too much. I just figure like the people who are meant to find it always do. But it's so cool. It's like such a cool and fun space to be a part of. Every single one of them is so unique. And it's really something humbling to like uh yeah, be a part of, because it's not like my knowledge, it's not me teaching something. What it is you create a space with someone, you set an intention, and they have their intentions of what they're looking to receive, what they're looking to get, and then basically you allow yourself to be a clear channel, a vessel, where you're not saying what you think you should say. You say whatever comes to you. And it's so cool because every time I've done these, it's always like every single meeting, there hasn't been a single one where at the end they're not like, that's exactly what I needed to hear. Oh my gosh, this was everything I needed. But the amazing thing is, for me, it's like I will also write things down from the sessions because I learn so much, because it's like the information that comes through, I'm like, whoa, this is a new perspective that I've never thought about before, you know? And so it's cool because there's like, it's a shared space for learning, and both parties are benefiting. It's not like hey, I'm this teacher, let me teach you.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a really cool space to be a part of.
A question that I completely forgot about, but I really want to know.
Yeah.
What's the craziest spiritual experience you've ever had?
Oh man, the craziest spiritual experience I've had. Oh, I've had a few. I've had a few. I'm not going to share some on
Okay.
this podcast because they're too crazy. They're too crazy. Maybe there's like a time and place, but I've definitely had some like out of body experiences. And just like I've had really cool experiences where I intimately knew and understood like who I am, what my purpose is on this earth, and what like my, I guess, highest expression is. And so those are really cool. But the biggest experience that kind of like kicked all of these things off was a was in the midst of like this crazy collapse. I was this millionaire in my 20s, made all this money, was running this business. Things stopped working out, like lost the business, lost the money, and I became really depressed. And I decided to go and take ayahuasca because I had heard that it was like good with depression. I wasn't necessarily looking for a spiritual experience.
Mhm.
I just wanted, I was just like, hey, I've
Help.
seen the data. This can help people. And so I took the ayahuasca. And at that time, I was still very much like Mormon, where I believed, like God was a man. He has a body. He created this world, right? Jesus is his son, the Holy Trinity, all those things. And on ayahuasca, there was just like a portion of the experience where it was just kind of like this initiation. And I remember I looked up and truly like it's so hard to put into words, but it's like I witnessed the divine in infinite forms, like beyond all comprehension. Like the conscious mind can't even comprehend it. And it just completely exploded every foundational truth that I thought I knew because everything was so far beyond what I ever could have even thought to comprehend, right? It's the great mystery. And that was just one of the coolest experiences because I think it just kind of set me up on this path where it's like there will never be a point in my life where I know everything or understand it fully, which means I'm always open to learning more. I'm always open to my perspective expanding. And so that was like the greatest experience because, yeah, when you just witness something like that, and then you hear people who kind of like, they're like, this is how it is.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's very silly because it's just like, you have no idea.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did my research, so I saw that you work for Goldman Sachs, I think, and so you had like this, I would say, stereotypical business life, and people are used to a certain image of you. Like me too. So I was working in advertising for a very long time, and like people have this image of you, and when you suddenly do something entirely different, like coaching, self-development, spirituality, I bet that's changing many of your relationships. Like, does your family know what you're doing? I mean, your mom probably, but that sounded like it. But
Yes, they know, but they all think I'm crazy.
okay,
Like
okay.
yeah, they think that like I know that there was like a time where they thought it was like some form of psychosis or like a mental breakdown because it was so different than what they had taught me, and it was so different from what I was raised in, and it was just such a big like 180 from who I was. But the funny thing is, it's like that actually was like all by design because one of the things that I really had to learn how to do early on in this path was detaching from my addiction to external validation because I needed to be understood. I wanted my family to understand like the things that I knew. It's funny because I can post these videos on social media and people will hear them and they're just like, oh my gosh, that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
you're so wise, whatever. And then I'll say the same things to my family, and they're like, you're batshit crazy. What are you talking about? Right. But that was part of the experience, because I can love them and I don't need them to understand me. I don't need them to see me as, this teacher, or to have this wisdom, because I recognize it's like they're living the life that they're meant to live. Like, they're exactly who they're supposed to be. But it was really hard initially, because yeah, there was just a lot of like friendships, and yeah, personal relationships where people just did not understand. And like it really kind of like tugged at some of my core wounding of needing to be understood. And then eventually I just got over it, where it's like, I don't need them to understand. It's like, I understand myself. Like, I don't need anyone else to understand it. Like, I am safe with what I know. And I can honor this without, because everyone wants validation, right? You want
Of
other
course.
people to tell you you're right, because then you feel a little bit safer in what you believe. And you're like, well, I must be right because they think I am. And I think what I was being called into, and what most people are being called into right now, is learning how to discern, but then hold your truth, no matter if people validate it or don't validate it.
Yeah. Then I have a last question for you. How do you know? Because I'm also someone, I have a lot of spiritual experiences. I don't always talk about it. I never talk about it, because I'm someone who is like, I don't want to defend it, because people will come for
Yeah.
me and they will say you're crazy, and I know I'm not. Like, it's
Yeah.
just clear to me as day. Like, I know what the experience is. It's 100% real. It's just as real as all of my experience. Everything's real or nothing, but it's
Yeah.
nothing in between. And how do people like that, people like us who do have experiences that are not supposed to be there, how do we know it's not a psychosis?
I think it ultimately comes down to, again, I think the people that I've seen who do get pulled into psychosis, it's generally people who are very, very focused on like rapid expansion, and it's just expand, 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 and it's more, 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 but they're not able to like pull it into the body and embody that wisdom. And so, what I would say with the difference between like psychosis versus like a true spiritual expansion is simply, you can look at your life and it's like, is it bringing more peace into your life? Is it bringing more love into your life? If that's what it is, then you're in alignment. But if it's bringing chaos into your life, if it's bringing distortion, if it's bringing, massive roller coasters and ups and downs, and like, which you're always going to have ups and downs. Even when you feel peace and love, there are ups and downs. You just learn to like detach from those ups and downs. But yeah, you just feel into the energy. If you feel like it's constricting you, if you feel like it's holding you back, if you feel like um, nobody understands me, I'm the only one, like, why is this going on? Then I would just look at that and like make sure that you're grounded, have those grounding practices, recognize that all of this spiritual knowledge and experiences, they're very cool, but it ultimately comes down to, how are you using it to make this world a better place? Are you using it to anchor in more love into this plane? And so, if you're doing that, then you're good. If you're not doing it, then it's a good time to do some reviews and see, okay, where am I out of balance? Where am I ungrounded? Where can I pull it back in?
Does it make your life better, and does it bring you closer to love and to other people, or does it hold you back,
Mhm.
basically? Love
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Yeah.
This was an amazing episode. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so fun to be on.
Yeah, I learned so much from you. And also, I think it even helped me personally. So I think I will detach even more from validation now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so freeing. That's what so many people are being called into right now. And trust me, I know how hard it is. Like, I was so addicted to validation because I wanted to prove to people that I was a good person and that I cared, and I wanted them to see it. And it's just, I think, to truly anchor in your highest vibration and to be your fullest expression, you cannot be attached to any external validation. And it's so freeing. It's so freeing when you get over it. And so yeah, I'm kind of like a sometimes I'm a little bit crazy with it where I look for the areas where I'm afraid to express, and then it's like, okay, now I need to do it so that I can prove that I'm not attached to validation.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Same. Because I'm like super goofy, and I also like comedy content. Like I do this podcast stuff,
Mhm.
and I'm super into it. But I'm also very funny, and I'm laughing about so many things. And they don't. And I like to troll people too. Sometimes, like the
Yeah.
trolls are in the comments. Like sometimes it's just my passion and pleasure to troll back a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, should I really do it? Isn't this a serious topic? And they're like, no, nothing really is.
Sometimes trolling is an incredible way to teach,
Right.
Yeah.
Have a great
Yeah, it
day.
was so nice to meet you. Приятно познакомиться.
Ой, очень приятно. Спасибо
Yeah,
большое.
yeah, yeah. Пока.
Пока.